Have you ever wondered if it's too late to change the trajectory of your life? Today's guest, James Jackson, is an individual who has done just that. His is a story that's relevant to everyone, whether or not you're an entrepreneur or you're, quote, working for the man. James heard me on a podcast. Something inside of him said, reach out to her, even though he knew I didn't have any openings for my VIP coaching. He just thought, Katie can help me. And so he did. He reached out to me. And while I didn't have spots in my coaching, I knew that a program that I'd been creating in secret could help James get the results that he wanted. He was overweight. He was unhappy at work. He was being abused by his boss and not valued, and even had things that he was embarrassed to share with his wife. In this conversation, in this episode, he tells you that thing that he was hiding from her for years. And he shows you what he did to radically transform his life, where he's now today in a job that he absolutely loves. He's thriving, doing the things he feels called to do. There are important lessons for you in this episode, and I can't wait for you to get to experience them. Hey, welcome back to the show. This is Katie Richardson. You're listening to What's Working Now. Today we have a special episode. We've got James Jackson here, who is a student and client, somebody who's been through one of my programs. And I'm just going to tell you briefly his story. He had heard me on Josh Forty's podcast. Josh is a client and interviewed me on his show. He heard me on that show and something pricked him enough that he reached out to me and he said, hey, I don't think I'm necessarily a fit for your VIP, but do you have anything else? And at that time, it was about 2020, 2021. At that time, I actually was in secret creating a program. And so we talked, I asked questions about what was going on in James' life and where he was at. And turns out he had a day job and wasn't necessarily looking to leave his day job. And we'll dive into this some more. But what he shared with me, I knew he could benefit from this program. So he came into the program and we worked back and forth over Voxer a little. And I'm really excited for you to hear the profound results, things that have happened in James' life as he became empowered through the things that he learned inside of my program. So James Jackson, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Katie. And as we talked before, it's great to see you in person. Voxer, email, and texts are a lot different. So
yeah. It's funny because it's a couple years since we started working together, and this is the first time we've had any sort of a virtual face-to-face conversation. Yeah. So before we hop into the exciting results that you've experienced and the life that you're living today, which is awesome and great and amazing, by the way, let's start with the maybe friction or pain and frustration that you felt before you and I met and before you came into my programs. Paint a little bit of the picture of what life was like for James Jackson in 2021 before working with Katie.
Yeah, so I guess probably I'll start with how I felt and then kind of go from there. But you're taking me way back, so I'm feeling some of it again. But I felt like I couldn't do anything right. I felt like I was trying. You have this feeling like I know that I am worthy. I know that I have abilities and talent, but it felt like I was either getting squashed or people weren't seeing it. And so I got into this cycle of questioning myself. So everything I did, it was like, oh, is this going to be good enough? Which then I was spinning my wheels. So what could take 10 minutes was taking 2 hours because I was trying to figure out what other people wanted and trying to fit into that mode. And so for me, because of that, I started questioning, and I would even tell my wife, I just don't know who I am. I think it's to the point where I think I'm just if I said, well, what do I like and what do I want? I never had an answer.
Wow.
It was always, what do you want? oh, I'll do whatever you want. So I was very appeasing to
Okay.
people because I think there
Hmm.
was, and I think it's inherent in me that I avoid conflict.
Hmm.
And there must have been something way back when that made me think that I had to be acceptable to others in order to be accepted, to be
Yeah.
valued.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I probably have been doing it much longer than I realized, but it came to a head where I was in an environment that wasn't necessarily comforting and warming and supportive. So that enhanced the pain. And
Hmm.
then it just got to a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I
Wow.
would tell my wife, like, I can't I don't want to retire or die feeling like this. That's literally where it came down to.
Mm. Wow. And, you weren't coming to me in your 20s, you were middle age and you had kind of lived life in this way for a long
Yeah,
time. And a lot of times it can start to feel like, well, it's too late. I missed my chance.
right.
And is it even possible to change things? You have three beautiful daughters and they were growing up, and it would be easy to think, I missed my chance. I did it wrong and there's nothing I can do about it now. And yet something had you reach out to me. Is there any way you can kind of articulate or describe why you thought you could change your circumstances and that I could help you do that? What made you even dare to think that?
I I am an avid reader. I'm somebody who listened to a ton of podcasts, probably when podcasts first started.
Mhm.
I felt like I was a searcher. So I was searching. So even though I'm 53 now, but back then, just hitting 50, um, and in some way, I think it was like I'm at the halfway point. I this is I because I people will say fake it until you make it. I don't think I was faking, but I knew that I wasn't I wasn't 100% who I needed to be. And so in reading the books, I have a ton of books about, whether it's more religious backed, so, more spiritually based, and,
Mhm.
how do you find your purpose and your calling and things like that, or business books and how do I become a better this and a better. I was just trying to figure things out. And I'm gonna figure it out. And at church, because and I think we talked about it. At one point I replaced my father-in-law because he had dementia. So
Mhm.
I became pastor of our church.
Wow.
And so I'm telling people, you know, you don't have to figure it out. God's got it worked out. But the whole time I was figuring it out.
Mm.
And so part of me was, I think, there was the pain, but there was also, I'm not living the life that I'm telling other people to live.
Wow.
And so I think that, and I ended up saying, you know what, I can't be a pastor. It wasn't me. That was another thing. I'm just going to make somebody happy. But I felt like
Mhm.
I was letting people down because, full-time job and trying to do that with a family. I was doing okay, but I knew I wasn't doing what I needed to do.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
got
So,
out of, yep, yep.
well, two things that I want to call out here. Two things stood out to me. You looked into the future, and even though you were approaching 50, you were like, I can't retire or pass away in this state in my life, and something has to change. So you experienced that potential regret that you would have someday in your life. And maybe you were even starting to feel it then. And then the other piece was you noticed the incongruency between what you were saying and how you were living. And that was not okay with you.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's at church, my kids, because a lot of people come to me, what do you think? And, always somebody to listen and talk and spend hours. And it was always like, I always try to be encouraging and telling people you have a talent or you have a gift or you have something that God has given you. And don't be ashamed of it. Don't run away from it. You know, use it and let God um, bring it to fruition, whatever it may be. And
Mhm.
so all that was happening. And I don't know why I was listening to Josh Ford.
I was wondering that because he's
I
this young marketer who talks really fast, and you're in the corporate world. And
it was that searching and let's find the newest. And so I'm listening to him, and you came on, and he was just raving about how much you had changed his life, and he sounded a little bit like me. So where it was like, I'm doing well. So I've never done bad. Like I've
yeah,
always been successful. So everybody's like,
yeah,
why are you having, but it was because I've been gifted.
yeah.
So I can do things just because, but I knew there to really do something, and whatever that is, I had to change, or at least find that driving force, and that alignment with what God wanted me to be. And so for me, when I heard Josh Forty saying, I've been doing well and blah blah blah, but you could just hear, like, when I talked to Katie, like, he was like, my business changed, my this changed, my that, and it was like, okay, this is crazy, because I think you mentioned on the pod, you were charging, or he said it, like, you were charging like $70,000 or something like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
to coach. And I'm like, and I'm one of those people, that's the one thing I do well is, what, I can send a LinkedIn message to anybody. If they say no, oh well, but if they say,
Yeah.
and so I reached out to you via LinkedIn, and I said, I do not have $70,000. I don't have any,
Yeah.
but if there's any way that you could figure out, I just, there was just something. And as I learned more about you, it was like, oh, she's different. Like,
Mm.
there's, and I haven't worked with like consultants or anything like that, but um, there was just something about how you were talking, how he connected with you, and it was just, boy, I could use that. I'm at this point,
Mm.
and I can't remember. I think it was right before COVID.
Yeah.
And so, because I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, this was during COVID. I was like, no, this was before COVID. I
Mm.
just remember driving and talking, well, listening to your boxers once we connected back and
Yeah.
forth work. But yeah, I just reached out and said, um, if there's any way that I can be a part of this, I don't, can you do a mini version or whatever it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I need, and I think I was just at a point, there are a lot of things going on at work, um, that I just couldn't overcome. And so
Yeah.
it was really driving it. I was down,
Wow.
and it was tough to go to work and everything. So
Yeah. Which, as a gifted, smart, hardworking individual, that's saying a lot because, that's how you had lived your whole life. And yet it had just reached this point where you couldn't just keep making yourself do it. And it's really cool to hear your story because, something in that conversation with Josh impressed you enough that you reached out. And at that time, I was known for my, big investment VIP coaching, which was really high touch, huge impact, big results. And nobody knew that I had a program. And what I had been doing on the side that nobody knew is I was taking all of these principles and systems and processes that I was teaching people privately in the VIP sessions. And I was starting to record them and created this program called the Power Code. And you had no idea. And yet you listened to that prompting, you reached out to me, and I said, look, this is not advertised, but I get individuals like you who feel called, who feel stuck, and who want a way out of this. And they want to be able to be empowered themselves to get themselves out of this situation. And I I know that these principles can show you how to do that, and that I have a unique gift and ability to teach them in a way that it is very applicable. And so my heart goes out to people like you when I would meet people like you. And I used to have to send those people away. And that's why I started creating this program. And so I was really excited to meet you and be like, guess what, James, I have really great news. You can invest in yourself at a level that's affordable for you, and you can still get this impactful result as a consequence. And so you did. You came in, you joined my program. And I just want everyone who's listening to hear this. Like, when James joined my program, it was not in some fancy software. I think it was still an Excel spreadsheet where you clicked on it, like named the principal, and you clicked on the video link, and it probably took you to Vimeo and you watched the video.
Yes, it was.
And it was that simple. It was that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to paint the picture, you were at a corporate job. Like you mentioned, you're very smart and gifted, and you had a lot of experience, and you were not being valued at work. They were not giving your perspective weight, and you were being dismissed. And that was extremely frustrating for you. And you didn't know how to turn that around. And so I taught you some things that it was interesting, because you would kind of push back a little bit, because it's, in the beginning, what I teach is very paradoxical. It seems very counter, especially to a logical mind. And so it took faith for you to execute some of these principles that I had taught you. And I remember coaching you through it. And I'm like, look, I know it seems counter, and you don't have to believe me. Just test it. Just try it out. And so what were some of the things that you started to experience as you dove into the program, and as you were learning these principles? What were some of the things that you started to do?
And some of this goes way back.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that you said. You said it in the Voxer messages, and if people don't use Voxer, you're hearing. I'm seeing
it's like a walkie-talkie.
Yeah,
It's your phone into a walkie-talkie,
transcript, but I'm
essentially.
hearing. So, like I said, I was listening to it in the car, but the one of the biggest things that was an aha, and coming from a Christian background and from knowing the Bible, but you said you have agency.
Yeah.
And I never understood what that meant. But it was like you have the ability to script and to draw out and create your life story, and you have agency. God's given you the ability to do that. I never understood that. So I think part of the pushback may have been just not understanding.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say it or to read it.
Yeah.
It's another thing to act on it and believe it.
Yes.
And so for me, and with a number of the things that you pointed out, if you're really into just thinking about things and conceptualizing and strategizing and all that, but you don't act, you don't understand the power behind it.
Yes.
And so for me, I think it was one. I don't think you said like, will you just try it? It was kind of like, you have to trust me that, whatever you believe you can do, just do it, or at least try to do it. And so there were certain things that, and I'll tell you now, in my new role, I go back to the things that I was banging my head against the wall, thinking I couldn't do it or not understanding it. And based on what you said there, I figured it out for the first time. I was at that company for 13 years. For 11 and a half years of that time, I could never execute what they were telling me to do. They were right. I was actually wrong.
Wow.
But I was saying they were wrong because I just didn't understand. They were telling me, you have the license to kind of put something out there, but you can't solve everything. You don't know everything. And so basically ideate and put it out there for us to react to it, I would just sit there and just try and figure it out. And it would be wrong, and there wouldn't be time left. It would be up late at night, and I just never figured it out. So that agency piece, when I started testing that out and saying, I think we even talked about, don't accept everything, you have a right to speak your mind and to voice your opinion. And I would start doing that. Some of the reaction wasn't that great.
Sure. Yeah.
But for me, I was like, okay, I actually have a voice, and I do know what I'm doing. I mean, I would walk in every day questioning, like, do I really? It was weird, because if I was at a client, I knew what I was doing. But if I was in that environment, I felt less than and illegitimate and what have you. So when I started throwing things out there and not asking, I think that was not asking, but telling.
Yeah.
It started working. So that whole agency piece was one where, and that was probably a real big one. The second one that I still use to this day, and I have updated it, is the affirmations. And I think, because I kept throwing, well, what do you think about this? You were kind of like, well, it's yours. What do you think? I'm like, no, you got to tell me, is this good enough? And blah, blah, blah. And you were like, try it out, see if it's good enough, see how it makes you feel, see if it changes your mindset and your approach to things. And so, I went through iterations, and in the videos it would say, you might go through some iterations and test it out, see if it, and I did like this plain Jane, like corporate, what everybody wants you to say, affirmations that probably would be approved, by legal. but it didn't resonate. And so I went back, I don't even know if I went all the way back. I went back to when I was a kid.
Wow.
And like, what did I, and that's really, so with all of this, it was like, what was I back then? When I was like super creative. Because I wanted to be in advertising. So I like drew all the time, did all that. I probably shared that with you, but so one of my affirmations is, I am a creator.
Ooh, yes.
And so, because that allowed me, it's like, no, I'm creative.
Yeah.
I can come up with, and I knew I was, but to say it every day.
Yeah.
And there were just other ones that I literally had to tell myself, and this is one, I'm really good because I'm creative and I care. And so it's not only that I'm creative, but that I care about the people that I'm creating for. And so that's why I'm good. And if I thought back to everything that people talked about, it was like, well, James cares. Like, he really cares. He's going to spend the time. And so it's like, well, that is a skill or a talent that I had, but I never gave it credence that it was something that was different or something that really made me me.
Yeah.
So I've gone beyond that. I've brushed up and advanced them, but I had them on my phone, on my reminders, every morning, every noon. And they're still on my phone every morning and every noon. And I went away from it a little while, and it's like, ooh, I hit a rocky point, and I went back to it. So not only did those fundamentals and those key aspects of the program help me then, you sometimes have to do a refresher course, and you have to go back, and so and I'm at a new point now to where that was me digging out of a hole, and I'm out of the hole. So it's okay. It's still some of the same elements, but how do I kind of advance it to the next level? And so that's why I went back and with both of those, agency and the affirmations.
So good.
I've reset them and refreshed them.
Yeah. Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. If you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
I love how you use that word fundamentals. And that's how I approach coaching. It's all about really empowering the individual and not me being the one who comes in and kind of fixes all of the problems and solves things. It's really about empowering you, not just today in your life, but for the long term. And to your point, yes, these will help you get out of a hole if that's where you are, and they'll help you even if life's pretty good. It's that foundational principle that you can always rely on in those moments where maybe you're lacking clarity or lacking direction or lacking answers and definition. You can rely on these principles that you learned inside of the program to give you that clarity, direction, and answers, so to speak. And so it's cool to hear you describe your experience after being inside of my program, because you and I worked together over Voxer, the walkie-talkie type program, for I think it was like 9 months. And then we lost touch, and you recently resurfaced in my life. And so tell everybody, as you learned these foundational principles and you started getting results that has been compounding, at the time when you came into the program, you were stuck in this job, you were frustrated, your boss was a jerk and not valuing you. And you started to wonder if there was greater possibility for you. Tell us now what you've created in your life today and what life looks like today.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I am going to step back to that job, because it actually was the starting point.
Yeah.
So after going through the program, because I had been looking for other opportunities and not getting any results. Throw the resume out there, talk to people, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When I went through the program and I started doing the affirmations, all of a sudden it clicked. It's like, you have to do well where you are.
Ooh.
Who's going to want you if you're not even doing well where you are? And what I meant by that was I have to feel comfortable and confident enough in who I am, where I am. So I had to break through that.
Yes.
And so I doubled down at my job. And I went from having a really poor review, not my fault, but I got a poor review, to having the best review, getting a mid-year bonus.
Wow.
Working on multiple projects and like using the principles, and everybody was busy, so it's like, what, I got it. So I'll put together the proposal, I'll put together all, and so all of a sudden people were like, wow, James is taking on these things that are way beyond what we're asking him to, and literally, so the funny thing is, you think you're in this hole, and people that know you, they kind of see it too. They don't know what it is, but
yeah.
And so one of the principals, when I had my review, he said, "We got the old James back."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, I really left." I felt like I left, but it was like I was in survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's I got really just tangled up and and I was performing because I was getting good reviews, and I was winning business and all that, but it just felt horrible. And I think that's the thing. It's like, you can be successful and feel horrible.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I can make all the money in the world, but if I don't feel good, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So that led to me finally saying, okay, I'm going to go back out there and throw myself out there. And the response was like crazy. It was, I don't even know if it was the way I was writing, the way I was submitting, or I don't know. It was God, but but there
Mm.
was a difference in that. And so I did finally leave. So I was in consulting
Okay.
in an area called category management. So um, pretty much anything in a retail store, for instance, 6 feet, 7 feet and down, pricing, promotion, product placement, all of that is what a category manager does. And I was one, but then I was consulting them.
Okay.
And so I went from that, and I had always said that I wanted to really, really help people and I wanted to have impact. And I was doing that in consulting, but it was pretty narrow, and there was this huge financial aspect to it that it's like, boy, I could help them, but I got to charge them $150,000.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of misses. So I'm literally, by the grace of God, because at that point I was saying I just need to find something. I need to get to a better environment, better place. So I was like, I can sell. Never really said I could sell, but I can sell. So I'm like, I'm going to find a sales job. And
Wow.
so yeah, so I reached out to a company and I'm based in Minneapolis, that works with private equity firms. Never done private equity in my life.
I love this.
And I have sold and I've built stuff, but I've never said I'm a true salesperson. It's always been part of my job.
Yeah.
This is 100%
Yeah.
like I'm gonna be on commission and all that. And
Yeah.
so I I reached out to this firm to do this sales with private equity and software and all that. And they said, oh, by the way, you might want this other job or be interested in this other job that may align better with what you're doing. We own the Category Management Association. And so we support all the category managers in the world.
What?
Yeah. So
Wow.
so I am working, and it's under a different company, but part of my
Okay.
role is working with the Category Management Association. So it's not a
Wow.
sales role, but when I came in, because of my background in category management,
Yeah.
um, I have touched everything.
Wow.
And so so yeah, I'm in a different environment. Um, the role and the job that I had, every role and job I had leading up to it helps me to, where I am today.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
But the gig that I came from, the appreciation I have now for what I learned
Hmm.
and what I was exposed to, even though it was tough.
Yeah.
And consulting's tough anyway, but it was tough. I I would not be where I am today without
Hmm.
it. And so um and it's for anybody, you go through your journey and you have stops along the way. And some of them are really tough and really painful. And you'd rather like forget about them, but then you realize, oh, that just helped build me to where I am today. And
Yeah.
so you have to value them and you have to appreciate them. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm doing now. And then I have a couple other little side projects I do here as well. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm 1 year in.
Wow. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about how you ended up in that place, which is a very good fit. And you're very uniquely experienced and gifted to be able to hold that position and do it successfully. And yet you thought you were seeking out a sales job, and then kind of through the back door, you found this really great
Mhm.
position that you're uniquely suited for, which is just so cool. I love that you acknowledge the hand of God in that. And I'm going to acknowledge your hard work, your hard internal work that you had done leading up to that, which kind of led you in this new direction where you started taking new action. And I really appreciated you calling that out. I think a lot of times that's the gap between somebody being stuck, feeling constrained and frustrated, and suddenly being in a place of momentum and experiencing meaningful results. It's the action piece, and you can't just take frantic action. That's not going to get you there. And yet you learned the principles and saw how maybe to your surprise, you hadn't been living them, and you got this new visibility and clarity on what it looks like to live that principle that you love and you believe, and maybe hadn't realized you weren't living. And that is the key. That's kind of the gasoline on the fire, if you will. Because like, as you start to learn these principles, it lights a fire in you, and then you pour gasoline on that fire by living those principles in a way that you didn't see previously and you didn't even know was possible. And James, you're a family man and you're a man of God. So it's great to hear how this program and learning the power code, how it impacted you professionally. What other areas of your life did it impact, and what did that look like?
I would tell you that at home, there are times where I did accept things, and I now do push back. I think that's with everything. With everything with me, and I think you even might have mentioned it in the videos, people that are used to you being a certain way, when you start making the change, they have to learn it too, that, and so they may not initially react in a certain way because they're used to James in the other way. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I never told anyone that I did your program. And right or wrong, there was some shame to it.
Sure.
And again, everybody sees you, because everybody sees me like, well, James has got it, figured out, and he's, so successful and blah, blah, blah. And I keep saying like, no, 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 no. I've got problems, but I never told my wife.
Wow.
Until I said yes to being on this podcast.
Wow.
And then I said, oh, by the way, yeah. So it was truly me just going on a journey. So that's the other reason why I think that other people may not, especially at home, didn't understand. I would give hints. So I would say, hey, I'm going through this program and blah, blah, blah. And so some of the principles that I've learned, I was sharing, especially with because I have 3 girls.
Yeah.
And, they've all had, especially my middle one, has had some rough patches along the way. And so I'm like, you got to do your affirmations. You got to do this. You got, and so, and I did it out of scope of the whole program. So she's like, well, I don't know how to. And so then I had to kind of slow down, but I truly believe in them. At church, and other places, I think it's just, I do take more chances with certain things. I think that I am, because of the fear of failure, fear of feeling embarrassed or what have you, you become risk averse. And so for me, super risk averse. And so I think with everything, maybe saying yes to different things that I never said yes to, has probably been, and I don't know if people notice it or not, but for me, it's like, oh, okay, I said yes. It went well or it didn't, I don't know, but I did it.
Yeah.
And so actually one that I did do, and it was right around, it was probably a couple of years ago, is that just like working out and being okay, not being the strongest guy in the room, and battling through all the pain, because it's easy to go through the pain and be like, well, I could just stop and the pain goes away, but it doesn't get me to where I want to go. So being able to say, okay, I'm going to go through, at 50 doing HIIT training, and making it through, and like, oh, wow, I can still do a lot of it. So there's even those things where you've had the ability and you've kind of put it in a box and hit it because of whatever reason, you just get in that rut. And then you open that box and it's like, oh, I remember when I used to be, and I can still do it, or it makes you, it just, everything starts building on itself.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think for home and family and extracurricular and church, it was just more just living and not being so protected and worried, because I think part of it
Mm,
is, if I'm not doing well at work, then I need to protect home and make sure home's perfect.
yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, now I've ruined that too, or at least it's not optimal either. And so it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, who should accept you more than anyone else? Your family, the people who love you. So is that not the place that you would go out and try things and be okay if it doesn't work? I didn't think that way.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so even in that, it's just like, you know what? My girls are gonna love daddy no matter what. And if I make a mistake, a day later, okay, dad, where are we going? Let's get some food, and so it just, in general, I think getting through all of this just opened up
Yeah.
everything. It was like the cloud went away.
Wow. It's great to hear you describe how knowing and realizing your family loves you, because it is, as I described, it's paradoxical and it can feel scary and maybe even risky to implement some of these changes, change your thinking, and then therefore change your actions. And, what if this is all a huge mistake? I had some of those fears myself as I went through my own journey, and having the courage and the faith to try and test these principles and then see the outcomes that show up. And I appreciate you even talking about your faith, I think, or your fitness. I think you have even lost some weight. I remember a message that you sent me where you confessed to me, you were like, Katie, I have like 5 Pepsis a day, and I'm pretty sure you're going to tell me to stop drinking Pepsi. And I said, well, do you remember what I said? I use this example a lot, actually, James.
I don't remember, no.
Okay, because you were pretty sure I was going to tell you to cut all of that out of your life, and I said just replace one of them with a sparkling water, and you pushed back. You're like, just one? Because
That's right.
a big part of this is, oftentimes we try and buckle down and make huge changes in our life, and then we'll fail at it, and we'll go right back to where we started. And I knew you needed really small incremental changes so that we could build a foundation that you could really rely on over time. And so, yeah, I was like, just replace one of those. And you're like, really? That's it? I can do that.
Yeah, and a lot of weight for me is not a lot of weight because I'm pretty thin, but it was unhealthy. It is unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I lost, I don't know, 10 pounds, and
Yeah.
that for me is dramatic.
Yeah.
But I actually, getting into the fitness, I know when I'm heavy. Like 10 pounds on me means a lot. Like I feel
Sure.
sluggish and slow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went, and I think what that taught me, and I share it even with, is it's the incremental growth.
Yeah.
Because we want the microwave growth, like we want it now.
Yeah.
And I think you didn't allow that in the program or in us talking. I mean, you were just super reasonable.
Yeah.
So that was the thing. It's like, oh, one, well, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then, oh, okay, let me add another and add another and add. And
Yeah.
so, and as with anybody, I went through the program and tried to listen to every video before, and it's like, okay, stop. I have to do it step by step by step. And you even said, like, it might take you a while in this stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're at a point where you just can't do this anymore, I guess I was willing to do that. COVID hit too, which gave a lot of time to think and to reflect. And so that was super helpful too. But I think just in general, it was, it just a lot of incremental change.
Yeah.
That created that snowball.
Which is not sexy, it's not glamorous. And, a lot of times when people come to me, James, They do have a lot of success, but they quietly confess to me that their life is not sustainable. And that's a signal to me that they need very sustainable change, therefore, because there's huge dynamics going on in their life between their work and their profession, their faith and religion, and that community that is in their faith, their family, the dynamics of the family and the kids and everything that's going on. There's so much going on. There's tremendous complexity. And so I know I have to design and engineer a program that is highly achievable and easy to implement. And it's just incremental change. But to your point, what happens over time, all of those little incremental changes, they start to really compound. And then all of a sudden things start to change really rapidly because it's that foundation that you have built. And it took faith to build that foundation, because sometimes you don't see big results or big change right away. And so it can take a lot of faith. But I know I've experienced this where I, purchase a program or watch some documentary, hoping I can have some answer that once I implement that thing, everything in life is going to transform. And it's kind of the opposite. It's not glamorous, and it's not some profound tactic that then changes everything. It's really small, unglamorous, and I'm going to even say internal work that's required. And you kind of alluded to this, like we rewired your thinking big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I'll mention, because when you talk the paradox and the incrementality, so you gave an example, and you never mentioned his name, but there was a gentleman that had just gone through your program, and he had seen results, and he had gotten promoted and done a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I want that.
Yeah.
But it seems so far away. And as you're going through it, it was like, yeah, this is great, but I'm not seeing this immediate, like, how am I ever okay? And so I started saying, I'll just accept if I just get a 10th or 1% of what he has, as long as I feel better.
Yeah.
But as I went along, it wasn't until later, and it was like you get to a point, and then there was this step change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, oh, okay, now I get it. And now I see, and I think I even told you, I'm like, remember when, well, it happened, it was like, it happened. And so you never know when it's going to come or how it's going to come. I mean, whoever knew I would be where I am right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think, you read the books and you see all the, somebody super, super successful, and you don't understand all the work that went in to get to that point, and all the failures and all the trials and tribulations. So I think you being, and I mean, you did a phenomenal job. We would go back, I've sent pages of boxers, and and you just handled it all, and we would talk and what have you. But you do need I needed somebody to hold my hand. Because if I didn't have somebody, I would either figure out how to accelerate it and not get the result, or I would give up. And that's whether you're in fitness or whatever, and I read this somewhere, like even the best, Michael Jordan, all these different people, they all had coaches.
Yeah.
They all had coaches. And so for me, that was, I mean, I'm truly thankful to have you hold my hand, because I would not. The course and the videos were great, but the interaction, and knowing somebody was hearing me, like I could I talked to you, I shared stuff I don't share with anybody.
Yeah.
And like we just saw each other in person for the first time on camera.
Yeah.
But and obviously you're probably not the perfect situation for everyone.
Sure.
But for me, you had an aspect of faith.
Mhm.
You had gone through the journey yourself, and you just listened. And those things, it's like, man, okay, well, I'm gonna. That's where it was like, okay, I'm gonna listen to her, because it was like, you would say things like, how does she know? Like, how does she know that? And I'm like, oh, she must be really good. Like, just that's it, it's more than just you went to school. That is just an innate ability. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, man, okay, I can't screw this up. I've got to value what I have and use it. And
Mm.
and so and the one thing that, and I went back, I went back to some of the Voxer messages
Yeah.
just in the past couple weeks. And there was one thing that you said, and I was like, wow. And you said, it sounds like you don't know who you are.
Mm.
And that really, I think, I talked about the agency and the affirmations, but that statement, I think, really, it grabbed me because I was saying it. But for you picked it up in like a couple sessions.
Mhm.
Like, it just sounds like you don't know who you are. It's like, yeah,
Wow.
you're probably right. But I
Mm.
have to admit it.
Yeah, that's the brutal truth, James.
I
And
have to admit it.
and that's so empowering when we can acknowledge and accept the truth, because once we have that truth, then we have a foundation to stand on. And if we're going to deny the truth, then we'll never be able to make progress and move forward. And you showed up open, you showed up honest, and because of that, you were extremely coachable. And that, I can't make these results happen in your life. You have to be open, you have to be coachable, and you have to have the courage and faith to implement these principles in your life to learn how to live them, because there is a learning curve there and you experienced it. We think that it looks a certain way, and I coach you and I'm like, actually no, it looks like this, and you're like, what? And you start implementing them in this new way, and it's like, whoa, okay, I'm seeing it, I'm getting it. And it's an exciting journey, and it's hard work, it's discipline, it's a lot of faith and a commitment to self and that future life that you have been dreaming of. And you had the courage to reach out and the faith to say yes to investing in yourself and do the work. And I want to commend you for that and let you know it's been a true honor to help and support you in your life. And in a way, like, you're a part of my own journey and my story, because I knew I could help people through my coaching sessions over the phone. And I didn't fully, I mean, I had the faith, but I hadn't proven it yet that I could help somebody through my program and this virtual coaching through Voxer. And yet you're living proof that it works. So it's really incredible to get to meet you virtually, face to face, James, and to really hear more details on your stories. And just wanted to say thank you. It's just been such an honor to help you in your life. And it's truly incredible to catch up with you and to hear how much learning these principles is continuing to impact your life even today.
Yeah, as I said, thank you. Yeah, I would not be where I am today without you and the program. I I even asked your assistant, because I think you switched platforms or whatever. I'm like, I need it just because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you have to refer back to it. You just can't go through life just thinking I do it once and it's going to fix everything and remain. So it lives and breathes and in me.
Mm.
And it is truly, you have a gift for sure. And
Wow.
so anybody who interacts with you is going to get a lot out of that interaction. So I'm just very appreciative that you said yes, because you could easily said no, but I guess I took the chance, and here I am today.
Wow. Well, what would you say to somebody who's listening and maybe is relating to what you were feeling, some of what you were experiencing before you reached out to me? What would you say to that individual who's considering it?
First thing, you're not alone.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that are dealing and experiencing, they may appear that they have it all under control, but they don't. Number two is, and you pointed it out, you do have to be honest and vulnerable. So you do have to say, you know what, I need help. That's a hard thing sometimes, I think, for people to admit.
Mhm.
No, I need help. And then being vulnerable when I say that whoever you connect with, hopefully it's Katie, is that you give it your all, and you don't leave anything on the table. You just let it all hang out. All the good, all the bad, all the ugly. Um, you can't fix it if you're hiding things or
Mm.
trying to cover up things. And then the last thing is have a long-term perspective, because
Nice.
it does take time.
Yeah, it does. And because of that, it's lasting, right? It's foundational. Yeah. James Jackson, this has been so fun. It's great to hear your voice, see your face, to hear more details of your story, and to really hear how much you're living your dreams today. I'm really happy for you. Super happy for you. You know, if somebody wanted to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best way to reach out to you?
Absolutely. I respond to everybody. So I have, like, I don't know, 18,000 people I'm connected with.
Okay.
So.
Okay, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn
Yes.
in the show notes for
Yes.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Whether it's, it can be anything, but definitely the experience I had, I'm more than happy to share.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Reach out to James. He's the real deal. And for everybody who's listening, this is what's working now.